Associates interview series on radio and podcast. The show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Thank you. I just love that music today. What if you could trade everything familiar for a van and a map and chase meaning, not mileage? Our guest today does just that. Smithsonian Associate Sam Gennawey is no ordinary traveler. He's a former urban planner and respected theme park historian who decided in his 60s to do something radical. He left behind a conventional life and hit the road full-time in a black Mercedes Sprinter van he calls Darlene. Over 6 years, he covered more than 175,000 miles. He's still at it. He's visited nearly 390 national park sites and lived out what many only dream of, reinvention with purpose. But this isn't just a story about pretty landscapes or checking boxes. In his powerful new book, Sacred Landscapes, Sam Gennawey asks harder questions about memory, legacy, resilience, and what our public lands say about us. Sam Gennawey shines a light on both the beauty and the blemishes of American history, from the grandeur of Sequoia to the haunting silence of former internment camps. And he does it all with his boots on the ground and heart wide open. This conversation is about more than van life. It's about living with intention, aging with courage, and listening deeply to the land and the stories it holds. Smithsonian Associate Sam Gennawey will be appearing at Smithsonian Associates coming up. Please check out our show notes for more details about Sam's presentation. But as always, we have Sam today. So whether you've been to every national park, just like Sam Gennawey has, or you've only admired them on a postcard, today's show will change how you see them, and maybe even how you see your own next chapter. I'm Paul Vogelzang. Welcome to the Smithsonian Associates interview series on radio and podcast. Let's meet the remarkable Sam Gennawey. Sam Gennawey, welcome to the program. Good to talk to you. Of course, you're a Smithsonian Associate. I'm just very excited to talk to you about your upcoming presentation, as well as this wonderful new book of yours, Sacred Landscapes. Congratulations on everything, and again, welcome.
Thank you very much.
I am a huge fan of the national parks. My wife and I, we go a lot, frankly, and just love it. You use this really wonderful way of describing it, too. I'll just tell you right out of the gate. You refer to them as sacred. And I have favorite national parks along the way. Mm-hmm. Which one was it for you that really confirmed this idea of sacredness and reverence?
It's kind of a yin and a yang to it. So let me start by saying that as a community, as a nation, we've set aside 433 areas, spaces that we believe need perpetual protection, and have an agency that tries to protect those as well too. So we have collectively decided these are very, very important places to it. And I've got kind of a yin and yang approach. On the positive, sublime side of it, it would be the nature parks. Yellowstone, Redwood, and Sequoia have just, every person in the nation needs to go to these three parks if you really want to capture the majesty of the United States. On the other side, on the history parks, there was three parks that really, really jammed it home for me, and I think were very instrumental in the genesis of the book. And that would be Andersonville in Georgia, Washita in Oklahoma, and Manzanar in California, because each of those represents maybe darker times within our nation's history. And there are things that many of this audience are very familiar with. You've read it in all these books, but it's the moment you step on the ground and you actually see it for yourself that it really comes home. And the importance of those sites cannot be overstated. Andersonville, if you've been there before, you can read all about the horrific military prison camp that it was. But until you're standing there and you realize there were 30,000 guys jammed in that small of a space with only that one piece of water, stream running down that was serving all sorts of needs, you really see the horror of it and recognize of how important that is. So it's been both a positive and a negative, and all that came together. And I recognize that's why we protect these 433 sites.
Yeah, I really like the way you put this too in the book. You describe this as something that we protect. It's not just necessarily about building these parks, and that's a beautiful way of putting it. I love it. It really lends itself very nicely to this idea of them being sacred. Well, you've visited 380 of the park sites, and I wonder if you could perhaps, this is difficult, picking a favorite child kind of difficult, but if someone in our audience might just get to visit one or two, we of course have international audience, but Smithsonian is all over the United States and beyond. Which one would you recommend?
I'll give you two answers. The
Yeah.
stock answer is whatever is the next park I'm going to is my favorite park.
Good.
I would say reality wise, I just absolutely adore the Colorado Plateau in the central part of the United States. It's 150,000 square miles that tens of millions of years ago was lifted up about 2 miles straight up, and then erosion has taken its impact. So this would include the Grand Canyon, Zion National Park, Bryce, Cedar Breaks on the erosion side of things, Colorado National Monument, places that are like that. But there's a human history there that is just overwhelmingly spectacular. Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, Aztec ruins, places like this, and they're all on the Colorado Plateau. So if you're going to organize a vacation and you can do it on the Colorado Plateau, you will come home very satisfied. But if you only had one park to go to, I'm going to have to say it's going to be Yellowstone, because Yellowstone is everything. It's one giant loop. It's got such a variety of environments that you can go visit, and none of those are things you're going to find anywhere else. So that would be, if you had to have one, and I think that's tough. You got to go to the original, just like
Yeah.
you have to go to Disneyland if you want to go to a Disney theme park. If you want to go to the original, so I would say that would be my answer.
I will say, just quick follow up, that you are a Disney historian. We will put links up so that our audience can find out all about Sam Gennawey, his work with Smithsonian Associates, his work with Disney and beyond. Just a fascinating person. Really a joy to be speaking with you, Sam. I love the way you refer to you. So you have I think it's called a Sprinter van, I believe. Is it?
Yeah, it's my van is an Airstream Interstate. I bought it used, and her name is Darlene.
And her name is Darlene. I think that's fantastic. I just really,
Yes.
yeah, I think, these automobiles, vans, and the like, they really are so much to us. Yours, Darlene, is special. She's your companion. I mean, she really is a portal to kind of your world and all of your travel. In addition to being your home on the road, you travel a great deal over 6 years, 175,000 miles. Just an amazing story, Sam Gennawey. What have you learned about life with Darlene that you
I
couldn't have learned any other way?
I like that you called it a portal, because that's exactly what I see it. She's my magic carpet from place to place and that sort of thing. What I've really learned, I enjoyed the freedom. I'm retired. I retired early. I decided that my older brother had died when he was 63, and I decided I'm not going to wait to retire. I tried to cobble together to make sure I had the financial resources to be able to do this, as I bought a used van, and I did all the research. I'm sure many of this audience is looking at YouTube and the videos of van lifers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And by being in Darlene, instead of spending money on a house and then doing a lot of travel, I can travel with the house. So I always have my bedroom, I've got my bathroom, I got my kitchen, and I've got my car with me at all times. Darlene's 22 feet long. She's a black van. I maintain it internally quite well, but externally I just sort of let the paint fade so that I can do what's called boondocking, which means I can go into parking lots and just sort of find spaces. And on the life lesson side of it, by traveling and living this way, you really come to accept that life, there's always something. There's always something that's wrong. There's always something that's broken. There's always something that's good. There's always something that's beautiful, and it lets you celebrate the little wins. And I really enjoy that kind of a concept to it. And she's opened the doors to me so that not only can I visit these parks, but I've now been lucky enough to be a volunteer in over a dozen parks now, and continue to do that as part of my lifestyle. So I'm living in some of the most magical, beautiful places in the United States, and being able to share what I've learned with visitors. And I absolutely enjoy that. I get to go visit strange things along the road. And you've really never visited America unless you get off the freeways and you get on that highway that was the highway that was so busy that they had to build the freeway. And then, especially, you're lucky if you can find the road that was the highway before that,
Uh,
before they built the bigger road. And that's traveling the back roads of America is the only way to go.
yeah, my son and I traveled across country via kind of that southern route, and we took
Mhm.
66 as much as we could, and some of it was the old original 66, some of it was the newer. Then we had to get on the interstate at a couple places. We always felt very safe. Did you feel safe? Do you feel? I mean, here you're with us today, and you look great. So I'm assuming that you're very safe. That's our hope. But do you always feel safe?
Yeah, in general, I do. I mean, I have
Boondocking?
California.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a California plate, so that sometimes in certain parts of the country makes people kind of look at me sort of odd.
I'm from
But
California, so I
yeah,
understand.
okay, all right, good, good. So you understand, and you
I
have your
do. I
license
get
plate.
it.
Yeah, in general, I do. I mean, that's also part of the journey is to
Yeah.
try to understand your surroundings and be comfortable in your surroundings. And when I'm not, if I'm camped out someplace and I feel just any kind of uneasiness, I'll go move someplace else. But and it's becoming more and more difficult as time goes along. The laws and stuff are not becoming favorable to van life. It's a lot more difficult than it was when I started now 7.5 years ago. But yes, in general, I feel very safe. I've thankfully have not had the knock on the door, so I don't have any wood around here. Metal, but hopefully that'll work. So there's that. I don't drive above the speed limit. I'm very cautious about that because I don't feel I'm in a hurry, and I plan my travel to not be in a hurry. I used to live 2 blocks away from Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles before retiring, so I can understand when things are really bad what it looks like, and know not to be in places that are like that as well too. But yeah, in general, I feel safe. I always try to make sure I know where the local police are. If I'm in the national parks, I feel very, very safe and comfortable within those. And most all the federal lands, I generally feel very comfortable as well too.
The book is wonderful. Again, Sam Gennawey is our guest today. Just fantastic, sacred landscapes we're talking about. You write in the book about, and you talked about Anderson, but you write about the sacred nature of these wonderful parks and some of the proudest and darkest moments in America's park history. The grandeur of the redwoods. I am from California, so
Hmm.
I love the redwood national forests. But you write about Japanese internment camps too, and so how do you balance your sense of awe for these locations along with some of the grief that is naturally present in parts of the United States?
Well, I mean, the nation is just like a human. It's had its good times, it's had its bad times, it's had the proper ideas, it's had big mistakes along the way. I'm intellectually just a very curious fellow. I'm a history geek. I'm probably like many of you who are listening to this. And when you dive below just the first surface story and you get really into the details, you can learn a lot. I challenged myself when I started in this journey in my life to say that I want to ask the big questions about we the people and see what the answers would become. And I think I've been successful. I think that that's worked out really, really well. That I've been able to figure out at least why we do things and how we do things. I mean, nature is sublime and nature does heal all. I believe that.
Mhm.
The United States, historically, whenever we've entered any kind of a crisis, we tend to screw it up at the beginning. And we're really good at that. But we also try again and again and again, and we tend to get it right. We've been a constant battle between inclusion and exclusion. You can see the path of American history by those efforts as well, too. And there's a couple of other key lessons that I've learned about trying to describe us as people, and it's diving just deep into those details. It's not just going to Andersonville, but learning about the idea of the deadline. They didn't have enough guards to be able to guard as many prisoners, and the guards generally were young boys or older men. What did they do? They created a thing called the deadline, a short little fence. And if you went across that little fence, then you would be subject to being shot. Or the idea of when I mentioned earlier Washita, which is when Black Kettle was killed by Custer and the 7th Cavalry during the middle of winter, which was a new type of warfare of attacking your enemy when the weather was the worst, as a way of trying to create, in a sense, a genocide of Native Americans at the time as a public policy sort of focus. But we learn. I hope we learn from these things, and we become a better society because we've learned from the past. And by experiencing that, not only by reading about it in history books, but standing physically in that spot. Give you one example of where all these conflicts came together. I was fortunate enough to go visit the Trinity site. This is where the first atomic bomb testing was in New Mexico. It opens up twice a year for one day. And I had a chance to go there. And while I was there, having visited all three of the other sites of the Manhattan Project National Monument, and I'm standing next to the one little bit of leg that's left of the tower that was holding up the atomic bomb, I was just filled with pride that these people were able to, in just over 2 years, go from a theory to creating the most powerful weapon on Earth. And then I was horrified that within just over 2 years that we were able to go from a theory to creating the most powerful weapon on Earth. And it's that sort of bouncing back and forth. But when you follow into the details, you recognize just what an achievement that was. And to this day, I can't get it out of my mind of what it was like to stand there at that point in that place, in that exact within that square foot of where that activity happened. And that's where the glory of this travel is. It enriches you in a way you can never do just by reading or watching documentaries, that sort of thing.
You are listening, of course, to the Smithsonian Associates interview series on the Not Old Better Show, part of the Smithsonian Associates overall series in our 10th anniversary. I'm Paul Vogelsang. We're here with Sam Gennawey, van lifer, park volunteer, author of Sacred Landscapes, and someone who reminds us that reinvention isn't just possible, it's powerful. Coming up, Sam shares the park that changed his outlook on America forever, and the one story so painful he still finds it difficult to tell, plus how volunteering inside these sacred places has offered him not just purpose, but peace. Stay with us. More ahead. Hi, this is Paul. Before we jump back into today's show, I want to take a moment to recognize a truly special milestone, Smithsonian Associates' 60th anniversary. Since 1965, Smithsonian Associates, the largest museum-based education program in the world, has been inspiring lifelong learners with unforgettable experiences, connecting audiences with the Smithsonian's museums, research, and experts in new and exciting ways. This year, the celebration is for you, with a full year of special programming both online and in person, from behind-the-scenes looks at Smithsonian collections to conversations with astronauts, historians, filmmakers, and curators. There's something for everyone. Smithsonian Associates has created something extraordinary. I'm proud to partner with Smithsonian Associates to share their incredible programs with the Not Old Better Show audience. Thanks for being part of this journey. Here's to 60 years of curiosity, learning, and discovery. Smithsonian Associate Sam Gennawey is our guest today, author of the wonderful new book, Sacred Landscapes, one van lifer's 6-year, 170,000-mile national park journey. Again, I wonder, are you in a national park? Are we talking to you via a national park today?
No, actually, this is weirdly enough. You have to have a street address if you want to be an American, and I do have one. I do have one in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But I'm on my way. I'm leaving in 2 days. I'm going to be going, and for the next 2 years, I'm on my way to Fort Pulaski National Monument in Georgia, near Savannah, because I always wanted to live near Savannah. Also, it very much like the Trinity site, Fort Pulaski is one of those places that many people don't know is where the complete world changed. It's where we went from having cannons just being like shot puts to cannons that this are like rifles and like a football and can be very precise. So we went from general war to precision war, and that was the site. From there, I'm going to Cape Hatteras to work at Oregon Inlet as a camp post. I've got the next 2 years of parks pretty well lined up that I'm visiting. I generally go to a park. I'll work there for about 2 months, 2.5 months. That's usually when my expiration date tells me it's time to move on to another one. And I've bounced between roles of either being a camp host, but I tend to also be, I think, a little bit better doing interpretive because that's where my heart really is.
It's interesting. The book is travel log, certainly, but it's much more than that. It's history, very sentimental, and you seem to have just really found yourself in a very meaningful way. And I noticed that throughout the book. Your journey throughout all of this began really as a response to a personal need, a mental health reset. We'll use that
Yeah.
term. So, for those of us who are in their 60s, I'm 68. We have audience that's always north of that. Maybe some of us are feeling a bit stuck. We're wondering if we can make this kind of a change that you've made in your life. What advice would you give us?
Yeah, I think that that's just one of the maybe the advantages of when you're getting older is that you have an opportunity.
Mm.
You have an opportunity to find a way of exploring your own inner interest. So I let curiosity drive most of what I do.
Yes, one.
Throughout my entire life, I've always been a person who liked to share information. I like to share stories, that type of thing.
Mhm.
And I think that this gives me the opportunity to do that within the context. I mean, I call it the magic. So let's say I'm talking to a visitor and you're at the visitor center at the Petrified Forest, let's say, and you've never been there before. The only reason that you're at Petrified Forest National Park is that you're on your way to or coming back from the Grand Canyon. You saw the sign on the freeway off of I-40, you decide to get off and you want to see it. And in about 3.5 minutes, I can do what I call the magic, which is to take that visitor's apprehension and turn it into awe and delight by giving them some direction of what they're going to see and why they're going to see it. I'm a real believer in the National Park Service's approach to education, which is it's not to load you up with a bunch of facts, but it's interpretation. It's to provoke your emotions so that you want to learn more and that you want to believe in those protection of those resources the same way that the park rangers do as well. And it's very satisfying. And there's just nothing like talking to somebody, standing outside with them someplace, let's say, and pointing out something, and then the lights come on and they get it, and it just keeps you going. It keeps you wanting to do more, and having the access to the libraries within the parks and access to areas and spaces that the average visitor can't go, or just standing side by side with the rangers. It's I started off being younger, obviously, than many of my peers as volunteers. And so it's comforting to know that while I'm working in these parks, that most of the people I'm working with are older than me, but they're dynamite. They're all electric, and I think that that's comforting. Also, quite honestly, I mean, when I'm working within the national park system, if I ever had any significant health issue, at least I'm around people that are trained that could help me as well. I tend to be a loner. There's a lot of us I'm sure that are out there that are they're introverts, and you don't want to always have to deal with people. So I can turn it on when I'm working, and then when I'm not working, I'm living in the greatest places in America. So I think it's good, but I think that if you're thinking about it and you run the numbers and you can do it, even if it's just volunteering at a local park, do it. It's great. It's just something about giving back to this nation, giving back to the others that makes this all really work and keeps me going.
I really like that. I think so many of us are facing these second acts in our lives. I think we're
Mhm.
also trying to overcome isolation. And I really just enjoy so much of what you said about this idea of community within the park. You really have developed a wonderful perspective on that too. And that's a needed perspective. It's great to be a loner and to be self-sufficient, but it's nice to have some people around you too.
Yeah, in the right doses.
In the right dose.
And this, like I say, works out. And there's a lot of people that are out there as well too, and
Yeah.
they're fabulous. I have to confess that it's the volunteers that I've worked with over the many parks and stuff have been one of the real highlights. There's just some really bright people that are out there that are doing this sort of thing, and it's very fun. It's very fun. I'm always learning.
I think one thing that I picked up in the book that certainly you've learned that it's a theme and you reference the beautiful wildlife and you have this phrase that you say, travel like a bison, walk into the storm. And I just thought that is a powerful idea. We're all of us confronting life challenges in one way or another. Maybe tell us about a moment that you've lived that came to pass, literally or metaphorically, this walking into the storm idea.
Yeah, it's something when I was working in Yellowstone, I had gotten really hooked up on bison. Bison, prairie dogs, roadrunners are three of my all-time favorite animals as well too. And beavers, having worked at Grand Portage National Monument and having to deal with a bunch of dead beaver pelts, you certainly wanted to learn about beavers. But bisons are unusual. When a bison is confronted with a storm, instead of burrowing or hiding from it, it looks at the direction the storm is coming through and it walks through it because the bison recognizes that the easiest way of getting out of the storm is to go through it to the other side. And this is not an easy lifestyle. A lot goes wrong. I mean, your van breaks down. The one example of it was I was leaving Las Vegas after getting part of the van fixed, part of the Airstream portion, the housing part of it. And then the Mercedes side of the van, the turbo hose broke while I was going up the side of a mountain during a rainstorm that was turning into sleet.
Mm.
And I had to struggle up to the top of the mountain, knowing that once I got to the top, that I could roll downhill to the town of Pahrump and then try to find somebody to fix the thing. And instead of getting mad or upset or depressed by it, I just reconciled myself that I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this issue. That happens. It's not an easy lifestyle. It's not an inexpensive lifestyle, much as many other people might think. It costs a lot to travel this sort of way in many respects. But that philosophy of the bison, which is that when you're confronted with the challenge, when you're confronted with the obstacle, that becomes the motivation to keep you going and moving forward. So yeah, those big, silly, fuzzy cows out there seem to know what's going on, and I'm going to take their advice since they've been around longer than us humans.
So looking back on your 6-year, 175,000-mile journey, what story, maybe from a person or a place or just a quiet moment, a moment of just kind of that loner side, just maybe overlooking some of these sacred landscapes. What surprised you most?
I have to, I have to, the one moment where I think when I kind of realized that while driving the portal, from the one world that I was in to the world that I was going to be in happened really on one of the very first days of my traveling. I had bought my van. I took it out for a little couple of test runs in Los Angeles area just to make sure everything was good and I knew how to run things a bit. And then I thought, I'm going to go off and I'm going to go on my first big drive and I'm going to do a 5,500-mile loop of all the Western national parks. It was the National Park-to-Park Highway, which was a concept in 1920, and I was going to emulate the entire drive. And I even used, urban planner guy, right? So I have all these old maps and I figured out the original alignments and I was going to go ahead and do that. That was the first little intellectual project I had. And on my first day, I didn't quite realize that when you're driving in a van, you're going slower than other cars. I didn't really know where to stop at night, so I ended up driving all the way to Las Vegas and spending the night at the Circus RV park, which is its own special, unique kind of place. But it was also over 100 degrees, and I did not appreciate how difficult it is to cool down a van when it's over 100 degrees. And I thought I've got to find another way. So I did a little bit of research while I was sitting there, and I realized I need just to go get out of the city. I need to go find a mountain somewhere. So I drove up to Cedar Breaks National Monument, someplace I'd never been before. For those who've never been there, if you want to go to Bryce Canyon, but you want to go where there's no people, go to Cedar Breaks. It's the same thing. It's just a little bit smaller, and it's almost at 11,000 feet elevation. While driving up the mountain, I recognized that the temperature had dropped more than 20 degrees. And where I ended up landing on was an alpine forest with little flowers all over the place, with really nobody around me, with beautiful clouds floating over the top of the ridge as I walked on up and looked over into the Cedar Breaks Canyon area, and realize that I'm in control. If the weather is really bad where I'm at, I can just always get in the van and I can go drive somewhere where the weather is not going to be as bad. I'm taking that into account right now as I'm planning my trip to get from Los Angeles to Savannah, and I have 4 months to, I have a month to do this, and I'm looking at a polar vortex. I'm trying to figure out which direction should I go, which activities should I do, so that so I can work my way through the storm like that bison and get to the other side where the weather is going to be good. So that was a real eye opener, and that was within the first week that I started doing this. And I always remind myself, I am in control to an extent greater than I had been at any other point in my life as to where I'm at, what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, and what I'm experiencing.
Thank you for that. I think that's beautiful. I have a kind of a philosophical question for you.
Uh-huh.
We're just at this point in our history, we've perhaps been there before, where these national conversations just feel very divided. And so we have programs like Smithsonian Associates that do offer a little bit more of a meaningful, perhaps even a quieter kind of perspective, along with this access to history that you love, that I love so much, and kind of an access and awareness to culture and lifelong learning, which it sounds like you're very much a believer in.
Mhm.
As somebody who has worked so closely with the National Park Services as well as Smithsonian Associates now, what do you think the value is of these public programs? Are we still getting it right? Are we bringing people together in the right places around the right subjects?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I think that what it really kind of is driven here is that I'm not the only one who's curious about the world,
Yeah.
about anything, and whatever the subject matter is, whether it's physical history, like animals, every one of us, especially this audience, because this audience I know is going to be that kind of an audience.
Yeah.
Um, every one of us has something that we're just really curious about, that we're very intrigued by. We want to learn more. We want to dive into the deep end of the pool. We don't really care if we're going to drown because we figure we're going to learn something and we're going to bop up onto the top of the water. And as important as food and water is to sustain our body, we have to have our minds constantly being prodded to something new and different and learning something about it. And that's what these programs and the diversity of the programs, there's something for everybody that's there. You may be into the van life thing. You may be, bugs and bunnies. You start asking me about animals to a certain extent. I'm not as well versed. You talk to me about human history within the parks. I'm all over that kind of stuff, to a high degree. And we need that food. We need that food up on that shelf. And that food's being those intellectual curiosity opportunities that we can go and deeply explore. And the diversity of the programs, when you look through the catalog, it's just kind of funny what people are interested in. And you kind of learn something about that as well, about people. And I think it's probably more important now than ever that we end up sustaining ourselves by constantly ask ourselves, what's next? What's new? What happened? Why did it happen? That kind of stuff. So I love it. I'm so proud to be a part of this whole program, and being able to experience these things, the different people's talks, and then being out have the opportunity to share my knowledge with people about these things as well too. So yeah, if this went away, it would be the equivalent of, let's just go take all of our food and water away. We're not going to sustain ourselves. We're not going to be alive. And as we get older, our brains should be even more in tune with wanting to gather this lifelong learning, because we maybe have more of the time, and we can certainly build on our previous life experiences in such a way where we know we know the questions we need to ask because we don't know the answers. And that's harder to do when you're younger, but when we're our age, we know it. We know what those questions are, and now we have the time to try to dive into those.
Smithsonian Associate, world traveler, certainly national park historian, also a Disney historian. Sam Gennawey has been...
And Universal Studios, too.
And Universal Studios, especially. We will put links so that we can learn more about all of Sam's work, including his wonderful book, Sacred Landscapes, One Van Lifer's 6-year, 175,000-mile national park journey. You have a wonderful life, Sam, and what a pleasure, just an inspiring interview to conduct with you today. Thank you so much for your time. We're looking forward to seeing you at Smithsonian Associates coming up. Have a great holiday. Have a great next couple of months, and we'll see you at the end of January at Smithsonian Associates.
You too. Thank you very much for your time.
What Smithsonian Associate Sam Gennawey reminds us is this: the real landmarks in life aren't just places on a map. They're the moments we choose to stop, look closer, and listen. Smithsonian Associate Sam Gennawey will be appearing at Smithsonian Associates coming up. Please check out our show notes for more details about Sam's presentation. From the silence of a canyon floor to the rustle of a campfire morning, these parks, these wonderful, beautiful national parks that Sam talks about and the stories they hold, ask us to reflect not only on where we are, but who we are. Sam's journey may have covered 175,000 miles, but the real distance he's traveled can't be measured in road signs. It's found in the hard questions he asks, the history he honors, and the passion he brings to every sacred acre he sets foot on. Sam's message to all of us: it's never too late to go deeper, travel differently, and live with more meaning. To hear more stories like Sam's, to catch up on all of our conversations, particularly those with the Smithsonian Associates, and to explore our extensive archive of past episodes, visit us online at notold-better.com. That's where you'll find every interview, every guest, and every idea we're sharing. You can also connect with us on social media. Follow us on Twitter, X at NotOldBetter, and on Instagram at NotOldBetter. Today's episode is a production of NOBS Studios. I'm Paul Vogelsang. You're part of the Smithsonian Associates interview series. Let's talk about better. Please be well. Let's do better. The Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. Thanks for spending so much of your time with us. I hope you'll join me again next time. Thanks, everybody.